She was a quiet girl, often lost in her own world, but there was something about the way her fingers moved that made people stop and watch. From a very young age, she had discovered the piano in her small living room, a second-hand instrument that had seen better days. Its keys were chipped, and the pedals squeaked when pressed, yet she loved it more than anything. Every evening, after finishing chores and homework, she would sit down and let her fingers wander over the keys, exploring sounds and patterns that felt like a language only she could understand. Her family had always encouraged her, though they didn't have much. They worked hard to make ends meet, and sometimes the piano had to be moved to make space for other things. Still, they understood that when she played, the house seemed to breathe differently. Even her younger siblings would tiptoe into the room, watching her play as if the music itself held secrets meant only for them. School was a different world. She wasn't the most outspoken, nor was she part of any big group. People noticed her for her kindness, her quiet way of helping others, but they didn't always notice the depth of her talent. She kept it to herself mostly, practicing in corners, perfecting small pieces she had heard on the radio or in old recordings she found in the library. Music was her escape, her friend, and sometimes the only way she could express what she felt. One day, her teacher announced that a local community event was coming up. It was a small gathering, mostly neighbors and local families, but it was an opportunity for students to show what they could do. Her heart raced when she heard about it. She had never played in front of so many people at once. The idea of performing terrified her, yet there was a spark of excitement too. Maybe this was her chance to share what she loved. When she mentioned it to her parents, they smiled and nodded. Her father said, "Just play something simple. You'll be fine." Her mother added, "Don't worry about impressing anyone. Just play from your heart." They meant well, but the words lingered in her mind. Simple. That was the instruction, and her mind began to wrestle with it. She had so many ideas, so many melodies swirling inside her, but she knew the adults meant that she shouldn't try anything too complicated. The thought made her both anxious and determined. For the next few days, she practiced relentlessly. She selected a basic melody, one that everyone would recognize and find pleasant. She rehearsed it over and over, counting each note carefully, making sure she wouldn't miss a single beat. Yet, in the quiet moments, her mind wandered beyond the simple pattern. She imagined ways to add little flourishes, small touches of emotion, gentle crescendos that could make the melody breathe. She didn't dare try it fully yet. She was too afraid of breaking the rules. But the desire to let her music soar could not be ignored. The day of the event arrived. The small hall was filled with neighbors and families, the smell of food and the murmur of conversation floating in the air. Children ran about, playing tag near the stage while adults chatted in small groups. She sat backstage, her hands resting lightly on the piano keys, trying to calm her racing heart. She could hear the applause for the previous performers, their voices cheering, and she felt both intimidated and inspired. She took a deep breath, remembering her father's words, "Play from your heart." When her name was called, she stood up slowly, feeling the weight of everyone's gaze. She walked to the piano, her shoes tapping softly on the wooden floor. The room seemed to hush as she sat down, folding her hands over her knees for a moment before placing them on the keys. The first note she played was soft, cautious, almost tentative, as if testing the waters. The simple melody began to fill the room, and she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. She wasn't just playing notes. She was telling a story, one that had been living inside her for years. The audience listened quietly, some smiling at the familiar tune, others simply watching, unsure of what to expect next. She noticed a few children leaning forward, curious about the music, and it made her smile. She reminded herself to stay focused, to honor the instruction of keeping it simple, yet her heart yearned to explore more. Each key she pressed felt like a small brushstroke, painting feelings that words could not capture. Her mind flickered with the little variations she had imagined, and though she resisted fully breaking from the melody, she allowed herself tiny, subtle expressions, slightly longer pauses here, a gentle swell there. As she played, a strange thing happened. She became unaware of the audience, unaware of the room. It was just her and the music, the keys responding to her thoughts and emotions as naturally as breathing. The nerves melted away, replaced by a flow she had never experienced before. She realized that even within the simplicity of the melody, there was space for her to shine, for her spirit to emerge without disobeying the rules. Every note became a message, every pause a punctuation in the story she was telling. By the time she finished, there was a brief, stunned silence. People exchanged glances, unsure of how to react at first. Then, slowly, the applause began, growing louder and more enthusiastic. Some clapped softly, moved by the subtle beauty of her performance, while others cheered, surprised at the depth and emotion she had brought to a simple tune. She smiled, a mixture of relief and pride, feeling a warmth in her chest that she had never known before. Backstage, her parents hugged her tightly. Her father's eyes were shining. "I knew you could do it," he said, though she noticed the pride in his voice went beyond expectation. Her mother added, "That was more than simple. That was beautiful." For the first time, she felt that maybe her music could reach people in a way that words never could. She had started with something simple, but her heart had carried it into something extraordinary. The experience stayed with her long after the applause faded and the event ended. She returned home that evening, her fingers still tingling from the performance, and played the melody again, not for anyone else this time, but for herself. It was a quiet, personal celebration, a moment to reflect on what she had discovered. Music was not just a skill or a hobby. It was a language she could speak, a way to express her deepest feelings without fear or restraint. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the possibilities ahead. The simple melody had been just a beginning, a doorway into something much larger, and she felt a spark of excitement for what might come next. Even in the weeks that followed, people talked about the performance. Teachers, neighbors, and friends mentioned how surprising and moving it had been. But she didn't let it make her boastful or distracted. Instead, it became motivation. She continued to practice, experimenting carefully with new ideas, learning that even simple things could hold great power if approached with care and emotion. She realized that talent was not just about skill, but about courage, the courage to let oneself be seen and heard, even in the smallest of moments. Little did she know that this performance, this simple tune that had captivated a small audience, would mark the start of a journey far beyond her neighborhood. It was a moment that would build her confidence, push her boundaries, and eventually lead her to stages she had only dreamed of. The melody had been simple, yes, but the heart she put into it had been anything but ordinary. It was the first step on a path where she would learn that sometimes, the smallest beginnings could lead to the most extraordinary achievements. The days after the performance were filled with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She returned to school and the community center, and everywhere she went, people who had seen her play whispered and smiled. Some congratulated her directly, telling her how moving her performance had been. Others, who hadn't attended, asked if it was true that she had made a simple melody sound extraordinary. It was hard to take in, and sometimes she felt shy about all the attention. She had always played music for herself, not for recognition, but now she realized that sharing her talent came with unexpected consequences. Her teacher approached her one afternoon, a warm smile on her face. "You did very well at the event," she said, her eyes reflecting pride. "But now there is another opportunity. The City Music Festival is looking for young performers. They want you to play a simple piece again, but this time more people will see you. Are you interested?" She hesitated. The thought of performing in front of a larger crowd made her stomach flutter. Yet, deep down there was a small flame of excitement. Could she do it again? Could she bring the same heart into her music with more people watching? Her parents encouraged her, though they were cautious. "Remember, just play the simple melody they ask for," her father reminded gently. Her mother added, "Don't feel pressured. If you want, you can explore a little, but don't lose yourself in the idea of impressing others." She spent days thinking about it, replaying the last performance in her mind. She remembered the calm she had felt once the music began, the way the audience had reacted without her even trying to force it. She realized that the true power was in the connection she created with the music and the people who listened. As she prepared for the festival, she practiced more intentionally. She learned to focus not only on hitting the correct notes but also on expressing emotion. She practiced controlling the volume of each note, the timing of each pause, and the subtle changes in tempo that could make the melody come alive. She experimented quietly at home, adding tiny variations to the tune, trying not to make them too obvious but feeling the joy of making the melody her own. Her confidence grew slowly, like a small plant reaching for the sun. The piano, once a simple instrument in a worn-out corner, became her partner in creation, responding to her every touch with life and sound. The day of the City Music Festival arrived. The hall was much larger than the community center. The stage was elevated, bright lights shone down, and the seats stretched far back. The audience was full of families, music enthusiasts, and even local reporters. She sat backstage, feeling the same nervous flutter in her chest that she had felt before, but this time it was stronger. The scale was bigger and the expectations were higher. She took a deep breath, recalling her father's advice, "Play from your heart." She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the music before touching a single key. When it was her turn, she walked to the piano slowly, absorbing the sight of the audience. Their faces seemed like a sea of unknown reactions, and it made her pulse race. She sat down, fingers hovering over the keys. The first note came out soft, tentative, but as she continued, she found the same calm that had guided her at the community event. She began with the simple melody exactly as requested, her mind focused, her heart steady. The audience leaned forward, sensing that something special was about to happen. As she played, she allowed herself small expressions of the music. Tiny lifts in certain notes, subtle shifts in timing, gentle swells that made the melody feel like it was breathing. The effect was immediate. People in the front row exchanged glances, surprised at how much life she had brought to what they had expected to be ordinary. Her fingers moved confidently now, dancing across the keys, guided by the emotions that had lived inside her for so long. The melody began to grow richer without straying from the simplicity of the notes. It was as though the music itself was telling a story, and the audience was listening, captivated. Her confidence grew with each passing measure. She remembered the advice her mother had given, to stay true to herself and not try to impress anyone artificially. She realized that the more genuine she was with the music, the more the audience felt it. Her nerves transformed into energy, fueling the performance. She began to notice small reactions. A child's eyes widening, a parent leaning closer, a smile of recognition from someone who had seen her perform before. It was as if the music was reaching them in ways words never could. Halfway through the piece, she took a small risk. She introduced a gentle variation, a subtle flourish that made the melody shimmer differently. It was a fleeting change, almost imperceptible, yet it carried emotion. The audience sensed it, even if they couldn't articulate what had shifted. Their attention deepened, and the room seemed to lean in with her. Every note, every pause became more meaningful. She was no longer just playing the melody. She was living it, expressing the emotions that had been quietly building inside her for years. As the final notes approached, she felt a wave of clarity and satisfaction. She brought the melody to its natural conclusion, holding the last note just slightly longer than expected, letting it resonate through the hall. The silence that followed was immediate, thick with astonishment. For a brief moment, nobody moved, unsure of how to respond to the beauty they had just witnessed. Then the applause erupted, a wave of sound that filled the hall and echoed in her chest. People stood, clapping, cheering, and even whistling. She felt a rush of relief and joy, a deep sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. Backstage, she was met by her parents, tears of pride in their eyes. Her father hugged her tightly, his voice thick with emotion. "You've done it again, and even more beautifully this time." Her mother added, "I knew there was something extraordinary in you. You've shown it to everyone today." She smiled, humbled and happy. She realized that the performance had been more than just notes on a page. It had been a bridge between her and the people listening, a shared experience that went beyond simple music. It was her voice in a world that often seemed too loud and hurried for quiet expression. In the days following the festival, people sought her out for interviews and small features in local newspapers. Teachers and mentors praised her interpretation of the melody, noting how she had managed to keep it simple, yet filled with profound emotion. The young girl listened to the praise quietly, feeling proud but not arrogant. She knew that this recognition was a result of honesty, practice, and the courage to let her true self come through in the music. More importantly, she felt a change within herself. The fear of performing in front of people had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something else, a kind of anticipation and excitement. She had discovered that the stage was not a place to prove herself to others, but a place to share her passion, to let the music speak. Each performance was an opportunity to connect, and that thought gave her courage she hadn't known she possessed. That experience also opened doors she had never imagined. Invitations to perform at other events, small concerts, and even school showcases began to arrive. She approached each one with careful preparation, remembering the lessons of the simple melody. It wasn't about showing off skill or seeking praise. It was about feeling the music, understanding it, and allowing it to tell a story. Every opportunity became a chance to refine her artistry and to explore the emotions that had always been present but hidden behind nerves and self-doubt. Even at home, the piano became more than a hobby. It became a companion in growth. She spent hours experimenting with new arrangements, testing how small changes could affect the mood of a piece. She discovered that music was like life itself. Simple beginnings could lead to intricate and beautiful outcomes if approached with care and heart. And the memory of the simple melody, the first performance that had surprised everyone, remained a guiding light. It reminded her that even the smallest tasks, when done with honesty and passion, could become extraordinary experiences. The moment she had been waiting for finally arrived. A larger stage, brighter lights, and a bigger audience than she had ever seen before. This was a special music competition in the city, and the stakes were high. Young performers from different schools and communities were present, each hoping to impress the judges and audience with their skills. She felt the familiar flutter of nerves in her stomach, the same feeling she had known at previous performances, but stronger this time. She reminded herself to breathe, to focus, and to remember that music was not about fear, it was about connection. Backstage, the room was filled with chatter, laughter, and nervous energy. She noticed other performers practicing in corners, their hands moving quickly over instruments, their eyes concentrated. Some seemed confident, while others, like her, looked quietly anxious. She found a quiet space near the piano, her fingers brushing the keys, feeling the familiar comfort of its touch. She closed her eyes, imagining the melody she had practiced for weeks. It was simple as instructed, but her heart was ready to speak through it. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage slowly, each step measured, feeling the eyes of hundreds upon her. The audience seemed immense, and the pressure was unlike anything she had experienced. She sat down at the piano, taking a moment to steady herself. The first note sounded soft and tentative, as if testing the waters. But then, as her fingers moved, she felt the calm she always did when she played. She began with the simple melody exactly as the judges had requested, but there was a difference this time. She felt free, confident, and aware that this was her moment to express herself fully. As she continued, she allowed the music to breathe. Small variations crept in, gentle lifts of certain notes, subtle pauses that added emotion. The audience, initially quiet and expectant, began to respond unconsciously. Some leaned forward, captivated. Others closed their eyes, listening to the story the melody told. The piece was still simple, but it was alive. Each note carried intention, each pause conveyed thought. It was no longer just a tune. It had become a conversation between her and the listeners. Halfway through, she made a careful decision. She introduced a small, unexpected flourish. a shift in rhythm that was barely noticeable but added depth to the melody. Her heart raced, but she trusted her instincts. The audience reacted immediately, though subtly. Heads turned, eyes widened, and some even leaned closer to feel the music. The judges scribbled notes, murmuring quietly among themselves. She realized that the melody, while simple, could be transformed by her emotion and attention to detail. It was not about playing extra notes or showing off skill, but about conveying feeling. As the performance continued, she became more confident. Her nerves had faded entirely, replaced by a sense of flow she had never experienced before. She was not just playing. She was telling a story. The melody had become a river, moving gently at first, then swelling with emotion, and finally returning to calm. The audience could feel each rise and fall, each moment of tension and release. She played with purpose, letting her heart guide her fingers, and in return, the piano responded beautifully, its sound filling the hall with warmth and clarity. The last notes approached, and she held each one carefully, giving space for it to resonate fully. The silence that followed was immediate and heavy with astonishment. For a moment, the audience did not move. The hall seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the spell to break. Then, gradually, applause began. At first soft, then building into a powerful wave. People stood, clapping and cheering, some even whistling in admiration. She felt a rush of joy and relief, a warm glow spreading through her chest. She had done more than follow instructions. She had shared her soul through a simple melody, and people had felt it. Backstage, her parents embraced her tightly, tears of pride in their eyes. "That was extraordinary," her father whispered. "Even more than we imagined." Her mother nodded, smiling through her tears. "You made the simple melody unforgettable." She felt a mix of humility and pride. The recognition was not what mattered most. It was the realization that music could touch people deeply, that even a simple tune could carry profound meaning if played with heart. After the performance, people approached her to congratulate her personally. Some teachers praised her skill, others spoke about the emotion in her playing. The judges gave positive feedback, noting her control, expression, and ability to engage the audience. She listened quietly, absorbing their words but not letting them overwhelm her. She knew that the true reward was the experience itself, the feeling of connection, the understanding that music could bridge hearts. Over the next few weeks, her life changed quietly but significantly. Invitations to perform at other local events and recitals arrived. She became known among her peers as a talented young musician, though she remained humble and focused on her craft. The experience of performing a simple melody that became extraordinary had taught her something vital. Music was not just about technique. It was about emotion, courage, and the willingness to let one's true self shine through. She continued to practice daily, exploring new pieces and experimenting with her own interpretations. Each session became a chance to learn, not just about music, but about herself. She realized that the stage was not a place for fear, but a place for honesty, where her inner world could be shared through sound. She learned to trust her instincts, to listen to the music as it unfolded, and to respond with care and attention. The simple melody had been a gateway, showing her that even small beginnings could lead to powerful expressions. The impact of that performance lingered in subtle ways. Teachers and mentors began to take note of her growth, offering guidance and encouragement. Her friends and family were supportive, often asking her to play for gatherings or small events. The community recognized her as someone who could bring beauty into ordinary moments, someone whose music could touch hearts. Yet she remained grounded, understanding that her journey was only beginning, and that each new opportunity required the same focus, patience, and honesty that had brought her this far. Reflecting on the performance later, she understood that the magic had not come from complexity or showmanship. It had come from sincerity. Playing a simple melody with attention, emotion, and courage had allowed her to communicate in a way that words never could. She realized that music, at its core, was a conversation. A way to express what could not be said aloud, to reach hearts across distances, to create a shared experience that lingered long after the last note faded. That night, as she practiced alone, she played the melody again, feeling the resonance not just in the room but in herself. She knew that every future performance would carry the lessons of that day. That simplicity, when approached with heart, could become extraordinary. The days after her city performance were unlike anything she had expected. People seemed to recognize her wherever she went, and her parents noticed the pride that lit up their faces when strangers mentioned her talent. Invitations to perform at small community events, school gatherings, and local celebrations began to arrive steadily. She accepted them carefully, focusing on the opportunity to share her music rather than the attention it brought. She remembered the lesson she had learned. Music was about connection, about expressing emotion honestly, not about applause or fame. Her parents remained her constant support. They encouraged her to continue learning, but they also reminded her to stay humble and true to herself. Her father said, "Always play for the feeling, not for the people watching." Her mother added, "Remember why you love music. That is what makes it special." She absorbed their words, letting them guide her as she prepared for new performances. Each event was different, but she approached them with the same dedication and attention she had given the simple melody that had changed her life. At one school event, she was asked to perform for a group of students who had little interest in music. She was nervous at first, unsure if they would pay attention. But as soon as she started playing, the room became quiet. The melody was simple, but she let her emotions flow through every note. She noticed students leaning in, tapping their feet, and even closing their eyes to listen more closely. The energy in the room shifted, and by the end of the piece, many were clapping enthusiastically. The experience reminded her that music could touch anyone, anywhere, if played with sincerity. Word of her talent began to spread beyond the local community. Teachers from other schools and local music clubs reached out, inviting her to participate in workshops and recitals. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Each opportunity brought new challenges and larger audiences. Yet she approached them all with the same mindset: to play honestly, to share her feelings, and to connect with listeners. This approach continued to bring positive experiences and helped her grow as a musician. During this period, she also began learning to read music more deeply and explore different styles. She experimented with classical pieces, gentle jazz, and simple contemporary songs, always maintaining the emotional honesty that had made her first performances special. Her teachers encouraged her creativity, noting how she brought life to even the simplest compositions. She learned to balance technical skill with emotional expression, understanding that both were important in creating music that resonated with people. One day, a local music mentor approached her parents with an offer. The mentor had heard of her performances and wanted to give her lessons, focusing on advanced techniques and performance skills. Her parents were overjoyed but cautious. They wanted her to continue enjoying music and not feel pressured. After discussing it, they agreed, trusting the mentor to help her develop while keeping her love for music intact. She was thrilled at the chance to learn from someone experienced and eager to expand her abilities. With the mentor's guidance, she began refining her performances further. She learned about timing, expression, and the subtle dynamics that could transform a simple melody into something unforgettable. Each lesson was challenging, but she enjoyed the growth. She practiced diligently, applying new techniques while maintaining the heart of her music. She discovered that even small adjustments could have a large impact, allowing her to communicate feelings more clearly and deeply through her playing. As her skills improved, she faced bigger audiences and more critical judges. Each performance tested her nerves and concentration. Sometimes she felt pressure, wondering if she could meet expectations. But she reminded herself of her first performance, when a simple melody had carried her heart to the audience. She realized that the key was always sincerity and focus. If she played honestly, her audience would feel it, no matter the size or scrutiny. One particularly memorable performance took place at a charity event. The hall was large, filled with people she did not know, and the atmosphere was formal and serious. She sat at the piano, feeling the familiar nerves, but as her fingers touched the keys, the music began to flow. She played a simple tune, adding gentle expressions and pauses that conveyed feeling. The audience was captivated, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes. By the end of the piece, applause filled the hall, and she felt a warm glow of accomplishment. She understood that her music had the power to touch hearts and make people pause, even in a crowded and busy world. Beyond performances, she began mentoring younger students who were just starting to explore music. She shared the lessons she had learned: to play with heart, to focus on expression, and to find joy in creating music. She encouraged them to experiment and to believe in their own abilities. Teaching others gave her a new perspective and reinforced her understanding of music as a means of communication and connection. She realized that her journey was not only about her growth, but also about inspiring and helping others discover their own musical voice. Her reputation grew, but she remained grounded. She continued to practice daily, exploring new melodies and experimenting with subtle variations. Every piece she played was an opportunity to connect, to express, and to grow. The lessons of the simple melody stayed with her. That honesty, emotion, and dedication could transform even the most basic notes into something extraordinary. She learned to value every opportunity, every audience, and every moment at the piano as a chance to share a piece of herself. Looking back, she understood that her journey had been shaped not only by talent, but also by courage. It took courage to sit at the piano and share her feelings, courage to face larger audiences, and courage to continue learning and exploring. She had discovered that music was not just a skill but a language of the heart, a way to connect with others, express emotions, and inspire people. The simple melody had been the beginning, but the experiences that followed had shown her that the impact of music could be limitless when approached with sincerity and passion. In quiet moments at home, she continued to play, reflecting on her journey. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a friend, and a teacher. She practiced new pieces, refined old ones, and explored new ways to express herself. Every note was an opportunity to communicate, to explore, and to share. She understood that her performances were not just about impressing others, but about living fully in the moment, connecting with the music and the audience, and expressing the feelings that words could not convey. The community continued to support her, attending her performances and celebrating her progress. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the encouragement and recognition, but she never allowed it to overshadow her love for music itself. Each time she played, she reminded herself why she had started: to express herself, to feel, and to connect. The experiences had taught her that even a simple melody, approached with care and heart, could create lasting memories, touch lives, and inspire others. Her journey was still unfolding, but she had learned that music, at its core, was a gift to be shared, and that sharing it with honesty and courage could make the ordinary extraordinary. The culmination of her journey came on a cool spring evening when she was invited to perform at a citywide youth music festival. This event was larger than any she had ever attended, filled with talented young musicians from across the region. The stage was grand, the lights bright, and the audience vast. She felt a flutter of nerves unlike anything she had experienced before. Her hands shook slightly as she touched the keys, but she reminded herself of the lessons she had learned over the years: to play from the heart, to trust her instincts, and to let the music speak for itself. Backstage, she observed other performers warming up. Some were visibly confident, practicing complicated pieces, while others appeared as nervous as she felt. Despite the tension in the room, she found a quiet corner to sit, closing her eyes and imagining the simple melody she would play. It was a melody she had performed many times before, but tonight, it would be different. She knew she had the chance to not only play notes but to convey the emotions she had felt all her life. The joys, the struggles, the quiet moments of reflection that had shaped her. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, each step measured and deliberate. The audience seemed enormous, stretching far back into the hall. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of anticipation, and sat at the piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys, and then she began. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but as she continued, She felt the calm that always came when she played. The simple melody unfolded, familiar yet alive, and she allowed herself to add gentle variations that expressed her emotions without straying from its simplicity. As she played, she noticed the audience leaning in, captivated by the music. Faces reflected surprise, admiration, and sometimes wonder. The melody, while simple, carried the weight of her journey. She had learned to infuse each note with feeling, to let the pauses speak, and to use timing to convey emotion. The music became a conversation, a connection between her and every listener in the hall. Each key pressed was more than a sound. It was a message, a reflection of her experiences, hopes, and dreams. Halfway through the piece, she took a subtle risk. She introduced a delicate flourish that she had been practicing in secret for weeks. It was small, barely noticeable, but it added depth and resonance. The audience responded instantly, their attention sharpened, and the energy in the room shifted. She felt an invisible thread connecting her to every person listening, a shared understanding that this simple melody had become something extraordinary. The music carried her emotions and invited the listeners to feel alongside her. Her confidence grew with each measure. She was no longer aware of the vast audience or the bright stage lights. There was only the music and the emotions it carried. Every note resonated with purpose, and every pause allowed space for reflection. She understood the power of simplicity, of how even a basic melody, when approached with honesty and heart, could captivate and move people. Her hands moved with ease, guided by intuition and emotion rather than fear or expectation. As the final notes approached, she held them just slightly longer, allowing the resonance to fill the hall. The last sound lingered, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then, gradually, the audience erupted into applause. It was loud, enthusiastic, and sustained, a standing ovation that seemed to shake the walls. She felt a surge of relief, joy, and pride all at once. The moment was overwhelming, yet grounding. She had not only followed the simple instructions she had been given, but she had transformed them into an experience that touched hearts. Backstage, her parents were there, beaming with pride. They embraced her tightly, their voices choked with emotion. "You did it," her father said. "You showed everyone what true talent and heart can do." Her mother nodded, her eyes glistening. "This is just the beginning. You have a gift, and now you have shared it in a way that will never be forgotten." She smiled, humbled by their words, yet aware that the performance was not about recognition. It was about connection, expression, and sharing a piece of herself with the world. After the festival, invitations poured in from various events, music workshops, and recitals. Teachers and mentors offered guidance, eager to help her refine her skills further. She approached each opportunity with care, remembering that every performance was not just a chance to display skill, but to communicate emotions. She practiced diligently, exploring new melodies, experimenting with subtle nuances, and finding new ways to express herself. The piano became both a teacher and a friend, guiding her through each lesson, challenge, and triumph. Beyond performances, she began to mentor younger students, sharing her experiences and encouraging them to explore music with honesty and courage. She taught them the importance of playing from the heart, of trusting their instincts, and of finding joy in creation. Watching them grow and express themselves through music became a new source of inspiration. She realized that her journey was not just about her own development, but also about helping others discover the power of music and the beauty of self-expression. Her life continued to be shaped by music, but she never let it overshadow the simple joy that had started it all. Every piece she played, whether in front of a crowd or alone at home, was an opportunity to connect, to feel, and to share. She understood that music was not only a skill to be mastered but a language of the heart, capable of touching lives in ways that words could not. Each performance, each note, was a step forward in a journey that had begun with a simple melody and had grown into a lifelong passion. Looking back, she understood the significance of that first simple melody. It had been more than a task or a requirement. It had been a doorway into a world where her emotions, experiences, and creativity could find expression. It had taught her courage, resilience, and the importance of authenticity. She had learned that even the simplest beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes when approached with dedication, passion, and heart. As she continued her journey, she remained grounded, grateful for the support of her family, teachers, mentors, and community. She knew that music was not only a gift but a responsibility, a means to share beauty, inspire others, and express what could not be said in words. The experiences of her performances, the applause, and the recognition were meaningful, but the true reward was the connection she felt through music. The simple melody had transformed her life, showing her that even ordinary beginnings could lead to moments of wonder, growth, and extraordinary achievement. In quiet evenings, she still returned to that melody, playing it with the same care and heart that had marked her earliest performances. It was a reminder of where she had started, of the courage it took to share her music, and of the power of authenticity. She continued to explore, learn, and grow, knowing that every note, every pause, and every variation carried meaning. The journey of a simple melody had become a journey of a lifetime, filled with lessons, connections, and the endless joy of music.